Okay, so it's been a while since my last video. Sorry for the delay. Um, a few things happened. I actually made a few videos I didn't end up uploading just because I went severely off course. I had some problems. I'm going to show you what's going on here. Sorry, second workspace over here. But here, let me show you what's been happening. So I made a sample boot out of the pattern that I was cutting in the last video. So as you remember, I hadn't cut a tongue yet, so I had to figure that out, and it was a lot of going back and forth and being wishy-washy and all this kind of stuff, and a lot of mistakes. So I decided not to upload those videos. This is the sample boot I ended up making out of that pattern, and I'm gonna turn the light on. There are a number of problems with it. Like, it looks pretty good though. I mean, like, I lasted it and I stitched down the front to the mid, like just a crappy midsole piece of bridle that was kind of junky, just to stitch it down and see how it was done. So this is all stitched down, it's not trimmed, and I nailed down the back. I'm gonna actually peg down the back on the actual boots, but I had some nails that I wanted to try out. And like, this looks awful in here, but I did a much better job. Like, I didn't get the nails the right spots, and I was working quickly. Anyway, the point is that it sort of like looks right. Like, the throat looked right, and the vamp looked right. The heel cap was way too low. I can't fit the heel counter underneath this small little heel cap. And I wanted to make the pattern to come much higher, much bigger for the heel cap, and then I had to work out what the tongue would look like, and I actually had stitched this tongue in. This was a lot of, like, I wish I had better instructions for doing gusseted tongue. I don't recommend it if you're not super comfortable with just trial and error. I would just do a standard tongue and stitch it right here under the vamp and come up and put a little bit of like reinforcement behind these two where your eyelets are gonna go, because making the tongue pattern was just trial and error. I kind of measured it out based on my other boots, and then I tried it on, even though there's nails poking through here. I didn't clinch down the nails, so it's kind of stabbing into my foot a little bit, but it's fine. And then so I stitched up this to the sides. I trimmed off all the excess. I trimmed the top of it after it was in the boot to make sure it's the right shape, and then sorry, I'm holding the phone with my hand to record. And so it's gusseted like this, so like it seals up and it folds. And you can see this side's cut down deeper than this side, because I trimmed this out for my ankle bone and got it to fit right. And then I made a pattern out of, just mirrored it. I didn't bother tracing the whole thing for the pattern. I traced half of it and folded it so it'd be symmetrical. And so it did end up working for a pattern. I wish I had better advice on developing a tongue, but it was just a lot of like trial and error, and looking at like putting a piece of paper in there first and seeing how that would fold into a tongue, and sketching on the paper. And I couldn't do it very well in camera. It took forever, and cat trying to get my foot. And yeah, so then I made it, and then I cut it out so that I could use it for a pattern. And I tried a bunch of different threads and different stitching styles. Here's some green thread I was using, some blue thread I tried out. I used to use this brown thread, orange brown thread, for just because it was there. Tried out some different eyelets. I tried out this like antique brass. I tried out these copper ones that I got, which is what I think I'm gonna go with on the final boot. Sealed that in on the back. Had to break it off though because of it was through both layers. But yeah, so I'm gonna start over, and I'm gonna document that process. But this is what the demo boot looked like. It's actually not too bad. It's gonna need some support. The toe is just like one layer of like thin rubber, not rubber, leather. It's squishy. So I'm gonna have a calf toe on the actual boot. I'm gonna have much bigger heel cap. And that should be the biggest changes on this thing. And thankfully I already did one. I decided to do, since I'm making 2 boots, obviously, I did the first one off camera just to work out how I was gonna like do a lot of the trial and error stuff, so that when I make the second one I can videotape it and I can show you how it's done without making all the same mistakes that I made the first time. This video is kind of about the mistakes though. So I ended up going with this dark green thread, which I think is gonna look nice with this dark green leather. You can see the heel cap is a lot taller on the back. It comes forward a lot more, so it's almost just touching right there where that is. I have the toe cap, and this is a true cap toe because it's not, you know, just skived out and connected. There's actually the second layer under here, which is gonna help me have a little more rigidity in the toe, and also because my last doesn't have a very bulky toe, it has a pretty pointy, thin toe. So I think I can get away with this. And I'm going to be able to squeeze a small piece of hard leather in between the 2 layers for a little bit of structure in the toe. And I'm going to squeeze the heel counter in between these 2 layers back here for that. This is the inside. I really like the way that looks. I wish I had more to do that. But I also got a little paralyzed with fear while making this, just because I'm running out of this blackish green leather that's over there. I pretty much only have enough for maybe 1 more boot, maybe 2, but like if I mess up again, like I might have to switch over to another leather, which this is kind of cool leather I just picked up for like $3 a square foot, which is basically the exact same leather as the black leather, or the green leather that looks black. It's flesh out Essex, but it's this chestnut color instead of the green, and I really dig it. So maybe an ounce thinner, yeah, maybe. But not too much. That's still pretty sturdy leather. And then I just got sidetracked with some other projects and stuff. I was making some bags and wallets and stuff. But yeah, you can see the tongue is all gusseted in here. It's stitched in. I haven't punched the eyelets yet. I'm going to do that all at the same time for both of them. And I put one thing in the pattern I didn't make before, just this 1-inch strip of leather around the throat of the boot just for structure. It's skived down right there, so you see it gets thinner in between the 2 layers right there, just because I want this to be as thin as possible for when I put the boot hooks in. They don't have a super deep shaft on them, so I gotta make sure it goes through all the layers of leather. I'm hoping I skived it down thin enough. But this is kind of like folded right here, but I think it'll work out once it's lasted. So I think we're good. I think I'm just gonna dive in and start making the other boot. I don't have to show you how to cut it again. It's the same cutting process before, except now I'm using an X-Acto knife, which I had shied away from using X-Acto knife before. I was using a utility knife, and man, that X-Acto knife is good. It's really handy for cutting like the curves and things around this. And I forget if I had it for the last video or not, but I picked up some cheap like curve tools just to help me cut the pattern out a little bit better. I like things like this off Amazon. There's a package of them, and you can kind of use these to cut around and make nicer curves. There's some bamboo shanks for my next shoe project. I'm gonna do steel shanks in these guys, but yeah, it's already getting like summertime. I'm not gonna be able to even wear these boots. I'm gonna have to make I'm making a pair of more light shoes out of this buff Essex. It's kind of like a suede-y kind of stuff. That's another time. Yeah, so this is what the upper is supposed to look like. It fit over the last okay. I haven't cut anything for the second pair because I wanted to make sure everything fit together before I started cutting my leather. But yeah, I'm gonna start cutting. I'm gonna cut. You guys don't need to see me cut again. I'll pick you back up when I start stitching, and I'll tell you the stitch order that I'm going to go through to make the next upper. I did a little bit of trial and error. I had to put this together, then break it down actually once, just because I was putting it together in the wrong order. Basically, the order, just spoiler alert, the order is going to be these two side pieces. I think I called them the side vamps at one point, which is inaccurate. But these two side pieces, I'm going to stitch them together down the back with a crisscross stitch, as you can see in there, just to keep them together and get the back shape. Then I'm gonna add this 1 inch throat support around the inside of the back, the inside of the top. And then I am going to attach the heel cap on this, which is the trickiest piece to attach, I think. Maybe the tongue, but really the heel cap. Then completely separately, I'm gonna take the vamp and attach this cap toe. Oh, and I did some broguing. I did some ghetto broguing just with like the punches I have. It didn't turn out too bad. It's a little bit bigger than broguing usually is, but hey, you work with what you got. So yeah, you attach the vamp to the cap toe, and then you attach this back section that you built to the vamp, because you can lay it flat and mark the these holes right here, because this is where it's going to get tricky. You can attach this over here. You first you like mark it all out, punch the holes on both sides, and then you come back and stitch it, and it kind of all goes together. And then you come in and you attach the tongue. Am I doing this right? Maybe. Yeah, then you can attach the tongue onto these two sides right here. And then finally you attach the tongue to the vamp right there. That's my order for closing the upper. That's the term that you're supposed to use is closing. So yeah, so you can see there's a lot of progress made. Sorry that there wasn't more videos of the progress being made, but those are to come. I'm gonna show you how I did this is all saddle stitched by hand. Saddle stitched by hand. I'm gonna show you how I did all that. I'm gonna show you, I can also show you some of the mistakes that I made on the last thing. This is a piece over here that's just haphazardly chucked down here. Yeah, so there was, in the videos that were missed, there was multiple mistakes, including a stamping mistake where I was like I was gonna stamp my maker's mark on these guys, which like on the heel right here in gold foil, which was a picture of like a stencil of Norman, the brown cat that was around here a minute ago. And I was like, be careful when you're stamping. You do it on your pieces beforehand, and like make sure you get it right and don't mess up, and because you ruin your leather. And so what I did was I actually stamped it on this side piece, and the cap toe just went completely over it. So that was stupid. It wasn't devastating because I didn't lose a piece of leather, but it was really stupid. And then I had this back piece that was originally taller. That was going to be, this was the second phase back piece. It was going to be on this boot. And I cut out like a little notch here for better shaping it. And this is the stamp, by the way. Gold stamp that I was going to put on there. And I cut out this notch, and I mismeasured, and it was going to like give, some people do the boot with like a little like butt crack thing right here to help them better like tighten it to last it around the back. But I want to try to do it without that. I don't like that sticking out. If it comes to it, it comes to it, but I didn't want to like set myself up where I had to have that because I made a mistake in cutting. So I had enough leather to do one more extra heel cap thing. And then this is the counter that's gonna go underneath here and support the back of the shoe. I'm gonna wet this down and mold it to the back of the last when the time comes. And then also I had this lamp outside, and I was like I'll show you what I have a skiving machine. I was There's also a cutting machine, a Landis 3-in-1, and I was skiving stuff, and I just like chopped right through the power cable of this, and I didn't know why my light went out. And you can see it clearly on video, but we don't need to see that. And then, oh yeah, the main reason like I aborted on this pair was I was using an old sewing machine that can't catch. It's a patcher machine that can't catch a stitch. I'm moving over here because the weird neighbor's looking at me. It can't catch a stitch, and I was using it just to punch holes, and I was punching a line of holes down this side and a line of holes down this side for like this zigzag stitch on the inside. And it turns out the walking foot on it wasn't moving things perfectly evenly, so I ended up with like 3 more holes in the same amount of distance on one side, and so the whole thing just became crooked. You can kind of see how it's off balance a little bit because it just wasn't stitching evenly. So I went back to the drawing board, and I had to, that was what really made me just like, fuck this pair. I'm a boarding mission on that pair. I had to start completely over, and admittedly that slowed me down a little bit. That was like, something I gotta really motivate myself to get going again. But I have. There it is. Now feeling more motivated to get the second shoe done because I really want to get into the lasting phase. Really want to get into building the sole of the shoe. And I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, when I come back, I'll be after cutting. I'll be punching holes. I'll be marking holes. I'm punching everything by hand. I'm not using a punch tool. I'm using an awl. And I'll show you how I'm going to be closing this thing. All right.